Hi, everybody. Welcome to our DELC Early Learning Hub Director meeting. So happy to see all of you. First up, we did our chat box intro. So if you just came on, it is name, pronouns, hub, or organization. And on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being I'm still on vacation and 5 being like raring to go. Where are you at today? And I'm going to move on directly to our good news because I have good news to share. We have hired our Early Learning Hub coordinator. I am no longer by myself. We have the lovely Maria Mendoza joining our team. I'm so thrilled to have her here. She and I are just working so well together, and I'm just so happy. So, Maria, do you want to just introduce yourself to the group?
Absolutely. Yes. Hi, everyone. I am Maria Mendoza, she, her, aya pronouns. I know Hillary sent out a bio. Maybe some of you had an opportunity to read about it. So I won't do like my full recap, but I will do a quick little bit just to tell you a little bit more where I'm coming from. I spent the last 12 years at SEI Self-Enhancement in Portland, Oregon. I started out there as a parent educator, home visitor, and I love the work. I love working with families and early learning specifically, and home visiting was my jam, and just building relationships with families. And it's such a privilege to be allowed into families' homes, and I take the work really seriously, but slowly I was taking on more. And by the end of my 12 years, I was really had helped to grow SEI's early learning departments and was overseeing their various programs and the teams. So I got the opportunity to grow for personal growth. And when I saw the position for Early Learning Hub coordinator at DELC, I was really excited because I had had really great success with sending my families that I was serving or that my teams were serving, going through hubs, whether they were in Portland through Multnomah County or they were moving. I always felt really confident to be able to say, there's a hub wherever you go and you can connect there and it can be a starting point. And so when I was able to have the opportunity to apply for this position, I was thrilled. And then, of course, meeting and learning more about the role, I was super, super excited. And yeah, I'm just really excited to learn more about you guys, each hub director, and be able to really work in true partnership to be able to advocate for the work that you guys are already doing. And just really listen to what your feedback is. You guys are the experts in this work, but I want to learn as much as possible and be able to find ways that I can help make things better or highlight the work that you guys are doing in a way that can really show the story. And yeah, I'm really looking forward. I know I have a couple meetings set up with a couple hub directors, and I think Hillary has heard enough about it that I am just so thrilled to get out there and meet you guys. And the rest who I don't have meetings set up with, I will be setting them up. And I'm really looking forward to meeting you all. And I have felt so welcomed by all of you already. And thank you for having me. Yeah.
Thanks, Maria. Any other good news? I'm going to do the awkward pause until someone says something good. Hey, Sarah Stevens, we had the governor visit our hub. That is South Coast. That's exciting. Oh, yay. Was there a particular project that they were visiting or just the area?
She was here doing a tour, and she specifically wanted to learn about workforce challenges and apprenticeship program, but we got to talk about a lot of different things, including a pretty in-depth conversation around coordinated enrollment. I didn't know that she had such deep understanding of some of the challenges that we have been facing there. And so that was really interesting, but she's very lovely. And it was awesome.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you for sharing, Sarah.
I'll share one.
Sure.
Begonia and I got to celebrate on Saturday with Cairo, which is the Center for African Immigrant Refugee Organization. But they, many years ago now, they were one of our first preschool promise sites in Multnomah County. And now they have 5 preschool classrooms and a $8 million budget and 140 employees. And they're in Oregon and in Minnesota, just doing incredibly great work. And we just had the opportunity to reflect back on some of the early struggles and barriers they had to overcome in the system, which wasn't very supportive of Somali workers at that time. And it's just been really exciting to see their growth and progress. And Begonia was one of the main speakers, and she was hilarious. She was like, brought the house down. So it was super fun to be there with her.
Oh, that's so great. Oh, Molly, thank you for sharing.
I think that for us, this month, if nothing happens, we will be assembling the STEM Curiosity Kits for infant and toddlers. It has been a lot of work, a lot of back and forth to make sure that everything is aligned for infant and toddlers. So we are looking at September 25th, but we might have to push it to October so that we can do this thing as part of the a full week of volunteering events that United Way organizes every year.
That's great. Okay. That was enough awkwardness. I'm going to move it along to, thanks everybody for sharing that. David Mandel is here. Welcome, David.
Afternoon, and here to give just a little bit of a legislative session recap. I have a feeling a lot of this may just be old news for folks, at this point, and I will do the really fancy presentation technique of sharing on my screen on a PDF and scrolling through it with my hand, but I can also make sure you guys also have access to the document at the end of today's meeting. I would say every session is horrible, but every session is horrible in its own unique way. And in this session, because of the and actually I'm not supposed to quote it on that one, because of that extended walkout, really there's always a lot that happens at the very end of the session, and this time that was sort of tenfold. So I think there was just even a lot of uncertainty even at the end of the session of completely, what ended up on the cutting room floor, what made it through, etc. Before I just sort of go through the bills, that I think it might be of interest for you today, just a couple of observations, relating to early learning and care. This was the first legislative session. Well, we weren't quite yet, Delk, but this was sort of the first legislative session where, we were presenting as Department of Early Learning and Care, particularly around our budget. And I think a couple of things I thought were sort of interesting about this session is I think there was more awareness, attention, discussion around the issue of sort of childcare supply and what are the sort of strategies, both in terms of workforce, facilities, and other kinds of barriers to addressing sort of the crisis of childcare supply in the state, although that's also really a national crisis. I think what was one of the interesting things about that conversation was, I think it was really in many ways, the first time where there was a recognition, and I think you'll see this as we go through the individual bills, that it's really going to require multiple agencies and parts of the system to really address those challenges. So, just as I was saying that, this is the first session where sort of we were presenting as DELC. You'll also see, though, that a number of the bills that I'll be going through today involve other agencies and what is their role in having a strategy for the state in building, maintaining childcare supply, whether that's facilities, looking at zoning issues, et cetera. One thing I will also say in advance, though, we are still really just sort of in the early stages in developing some of the implementation plans around legislation. Some of the legislation calls for work groups, even those that don't call work groups, they'll either be rulemaking or just other opportunities to consult. We haven't quite gotten, just to be honest, quite yet that far in implementation. Just to sort of share for some of the timeline challenges, right? So for some of in a couple places, probably not enough. When the legislature asked us to do new work, occasionally they did give us new positions. Just even to bring on those folks to do that work, not only does that require us, developing a position description, but every individual position description then has to go through Department of Administrative Services for review and approval. So we are still just even working on some of those kinds of pieces to be even ready to, have folks on board around some of the implementation. So I will then, I think with enough, so I will then do my fancy sharing of my PDF and my fancy presentation technique. And again, if you guys don't have this document already, I'll also make sure that it's available to go out to all of you. So again, this is just a rundown that we did at the end of the session of legislation. These first couple of bills, are folks able to see my screen? Okay, these first couple bills are really the bills that DELC sort of sponsored this last legislative session, for the most part, which are actually largely sort of technical fixes. So I won't spend too much time on them. So for instance, Senate Bill 427 is a bill that probably only mattered to us, but was incredibly important. This bill allowed us to enter into intergovernmental agreements with ODHS and ODE to perform functions. So this was incredibly important because as ERDC moves to DELC to administer, there's still incredibly important roles that Oregon Department of Human Services is playing. That includes the one eligibility system until we replace the provider management system, the direct pay system, but also other pieces of the system. And without this legislation having passed and signed early, there was a chance that we weren't going to have ERDC functioning on July 1. So we totally technical, but also totally important to really making sure that children and families and providers, were able to receive services. This other next HB 3435, changing the name of OPK to Oregon Oregon Prenatal to Kindergarten Program. In part, a name change, I think really important in the sense that we do also really want to recognize that with the state increasing the investment in, what could be referred to as the early Head Start portion of OPK, that it's a prenatal to 5 program, want to emphasize the continuity. And this bill also addressed some language that was in statute that was making it, that made it impossible for us to have multi-year contracts with our OPK program. So that piece was a little bit more than just a name change. And again, last bill that we sponsored, HB 3558, really did a number of things related to what at the time was called the Office of Child Care, but is now called the Child Care Licensing Division. In fact, that name change would not have been possible without this bill. So one of the things that this bill did, which again may seem like a name change or just technical, was removing references in the bill in statute from the Office of Child Care and changing those to Department of Early Learning and Care. That may seem technical, but it's actually really important for really efficient operations, because one of the things that meant is that we actually couldn't share information within DELC. So if something was specified for Office of Child Care, because of the way that statute was written, we were unable to share information to make operations more efficient. Also made some technical changes, around investigations, and creating also for the childcare background, for the childcare central background registry, language that we already had for our licensed facilities, for our license exempt, of having limited enrollment in the CBR. So that's a place where it's an opportunity to really give families a little bit more flexibility when needed. Sorry, I realize I should go a little bit faster and not go through all these in such detail. 283, what that did is it eliminated it was in statute that staff of early intervention, early childhood special education programs had to be in the CBR. We know that, those staff were already receiving background checks through, often the ESDs that house these programs, and that was duplicative. So basically, the legislation says if you already have if you are an EI, ECSE staff, already have a background check, you don't need to be in the CBR. SB 599, I think, is another is an example of what I was talking about, of legislature also thinking about the role of other parts of the system in childcare supply. So this requires landlords to allow dwellings to be used as family childcare subject to conditions. So this is, again, other parts of the system that impacts. And then we have HB 2468. This was a bill that AFSCME worked with the legislature to pass. Really does two things. One, puts in statute, if the state is late in paying providers, that they will get a 9% late fee. This is for employment-related daycare. And then the other thing it does is it allows, if you're a family child care provider and you have a child of your own that's 10 to 12 years of age, unless that child has special needs and requires heightened level of care, that child doesn't count in your ratio. So I think that was really important for family child care providers, in the number of paying children that they're able to actually serve. HB 2504 was one of those other bills sort of looking at what are barriers to entry into working in a licensed childcare facility. And I want to emphasize that this one is just focused on foreign degrees and as a barrier to licensed childcare facility. And you'll see 2599, I'm getting the number later on, that looks at ORO, Oregon Registry Online, and other barriers to foreign degrees. So we worked really closely with Representative Nathanson, Alicia Gardner, Director of Licensing, and she feels like there's actually we have a pretty simple path towards a self-attestation from the licensing side to accept foreign degrees. So that's not a barrier, or won't slow someone down in being able to work in a licensed facility. 2599, this directs us to waive background fees for employees of certain respite service providers. There's been a couple of those respite service providers who have had contracts with the CBR. Previously, they were paying for those, and the legislature directed us to waive the CBR fees. Again, we cover the CBR fees for all licensed, actually licensed and license exempt family child care providers. HB 2683 expands eligibility or automatic eligibility for child welfare families, and that would be starting in July 1, 2025, and for some additional categories, families in 2027. Again, many of these families are already eligible for ERDC, but this would add them sort of as categorical eligible. For the child welfare involved families, that's both looking at foster families, but also families that are involved in the child welfare system where the children are at home with the family. So I think there's an opportunity to work on that around family stability. One thing I would note is because of the implementation date of these is not in this biennium, the legislature did not add any funding for employment-related daycare. So this will add additional families that are eligible for the program. And so that will be a conversation with the legislature on what does that mean in terms of ERDC funding for future legislative sessions. Also passed 2717, which creates outdoor preschool programs as sort of a licensing category. Going to be a fair amount of work around this one, since our licensing rules are, for the most part, sort of written in the context of a physical building. So there's going to be a fair amount of work to figure out how you write those rules when you don't have that building as the context. So you'll see also why that has a little bit of a later effective date for that, because there's a fair amount of work just to figure out what that looks like, how it functions, and also system upgrades that go with that.
David, I don't want to interrupt, but we have about 4 more minutes left.
Okay, I will try to go to highlights. 2727 is another one of those bills that recognize that it's other parts of the system that also need to play a role in this. So this one goes to Department of Land Conservation and Development to pull together a work group, really to look at local zoning and those kinds of requirements and where they may be barriers that can be removed for creating childcare. And then 2991 is a bill I already referenced. This creates a work group, a study and a work group to look at barriers to entry into the early learning and workforce, and particularly calls out barriers around organ registry for translating and accrediting foreign language degrees. And then HB 3005, again, another agency that's directed to do this work for the most part. Business Oregon will be in charge of administering the $50 million in lottery bonds. And this is the first real investment in early learning facilities, along with some dollars that will go to DELC to work with community partners to provide TA for programs to really be able to access those dollars. And then we have the Early Literacy Success Initiative, a big priority of the governor. The governor was very adamant that really also not just be a K-12 look, but also really include 0 to 5 in that. That portion, though, the legislature didn't really allocate resources yet, but has asked us to come back in December and tell us what we think those plans should be. And then just as again, for the most part, when it came to the budget part of this was really the first budget of DELC, $1.3 billion budget. For the most part, it was a current service level budget. And then when the legislature did look at dollars, they really were focused less on expanding services and really more on dedicating resources to support the workforce. So there was a number of really specific mandates across the program, Preschool Promise, Equity Fund, HFO, to really focus on what are the on directing some resources to address staff salaries. You'll also see that the legislature put in basically at the very end of session about 23 million, although 8 million we'll have to go back to February for employment-related daycare. That may sound significant, but I think if you go back to the policy option package that we submitted before the session, I think we were looking at more of something on the order of 215 million, given all of the additional changes that had been made to the program. And that was my speed read.
Thank you, David. Are there any questions from anyone? I see a comment from Sarah. We're looking forward to SB 1040-1 that was approved, which explores the childcare micro center concept. South Coast would love to be a part of the pilot.
Yeah.
Great.
And I know I believe that's on Alicia Gardner's radar as well. So I think she'll be very interested in that as well. And I'll just end by saying, I think in the next couple of weeks, more to come on next steps around implementation and engagement around implementation.
Right. And I'll be sure you all get that PDF as well. Thanks so much, David, for joining us. Oh, and Kelly just had a quick question. Can we learn more about 3198, or when can we learn about the plan?
Yeah, and I do know that both Department of Education and the governor's office, I think, are working on some pieces on that. So I think there might be an opportunity to come back and share more. To be honest, I know there's been a lot of implementation work on that, and I haven't really been too involved in that. So I think we can find others to come back and give updates as there's more information to share on that.
Great. Thanks, David. All right, we are now switching gears out of legislative session and going into kindergarten transition with Nancy Houth from Jumpstart Kindergarten.
Thanks, Hillary.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me be here. I know you have a packed schedule as usual. I'm Nancy Houth, and I coordinate the Jumpstart Kindergarten ESSER 3 grant from the federal government. And I've shared with you all before, and I just wanted an opportunity to both give you an update and get some feedback and have a little bit of conversation with you. I always like to get your input on all things kindergarten. And also, I think in a lot of districts, this is the first day of kindergarten. So that's really exciting. I am going to share my screen. Make sure I'm at the right one here. Here we go. Okay. So today, just for like 15 minutes, I want to share kind of ground everybody in Jumpstart Kindergarten so we're on the same page. I think you know a lot about this program. Give you some updates, talk through a couple of connection points that I think would be exciting to work on together, and then open it up for questions and conversation. So just to ground us in the Jumpstart Kindergarten equity goals, this is a program in 28 districts across the state, designed for children and the adults and their families to connect with the school staff the summer before they start kindergarten. So these programs have already happened, mostly in July and August. And there are three components. One is culturally affirming family engagement activities. We ask for a minimum of 10 hours. Joyful classroom experiences for children. And this is where children practice classroom routines, build skills, connect with their peers. And that's a minimum of 30 hours. So it's usually a 2-week program. And then bridge building with early learning providers and partners like their hubs. And that's designed to, have a warm handoff. All the things, we're all on the same page with all of this. I've been diving into Raise Up Oregon, the second version, and was really excited to see Objective 16 that really hones in on this sensitive window for families, this transition. And so I think we're all aligned And I just always want to connect back with you since you represent, all the districts in the state. I also just wanted to say, even if your districts, the districts that you serve, are not receiving Jumpstart kindergarten funding, they are likely doing lots of kindergarten transition work. So I think this is all really relevant. Okay, so as far as the updates, we posted the Jumpstart Kindergarten Toolkit in this past May in anticipation of the summer. And we're planning on revising and updating all those DELC links that changed, which I realized when I was giving a presentation a couple of weeks ago. We'll do all those updates, and a lot has happened, honestly, in the last 3 months, including the early literacy framework. And so we would really love to have your feedback. If you haven't had a chance to look through the toolkit, I hope you have a moment to do that. On the acknowledgement page, I think that's page 2 of the toolkit, there's a link to provide any feedback. So we'd love your thinking on this. A big part of the toolkit is helping districts know how to connect with all the different early learning partners. So that's a big part of it. So that's where your feedback would be really helpful. Another update is that the Jumpstart Kindergarten team went out to see these programs, in action over the summer. And I just wanted to share with you, throughout those visits, I saw the tubs that the hubs were giving the districts. I heard all about the hubs and some of the professional development you were providing. And it just really felt like there were such strong partnerships. So that was just exciting to just witness in person. Another update is that, like last year, we are going to have another regional meeting where we bring districts and early learning providers together. We organize it by hub. So like there might be a hub with 3 districts, and then they would have their EIECSC folks there, migrant, child care resource and referral, all the folks together to kind of plan for how to do the outreach for families to make sure that they can register, early with their school and then attend whatever transition program is happening. So that's on April 11th. And I just hope you can all put a hold on your calendar for that. Even if you don't have a Jumpstart district, I'm going to try and recruit you to be a facilitator, because what worked out really well last year was having very highly facilitated groups, and everybody felt really taken care of. So we want to do that again. And then I just also want to share that the Jumpstart Kindergarten grant ends this time next year. So this was a 3-year grant, and this weighs on all of us because we know sustainability is really important. So we're talking a lot about how do we, braid funds so that districts can continue and use those KPI funds along with whatever else they have.
Nancy, there was a question in the chat. Is April 11th virtual or in person?
Good question. Virtual. Yeah. And more, I'll be just sharing more information with Hillary and Maria as we get closer to that date. And then as far as connection points, this is something that's really on the minds of folks in districts and schools, and that's early registration. When I was connecting with districts last year, I asked, what are your barriers? What are your thorns? What's preventing you from having the program that you really want in the summer? And most of them said it's, families that don't register in the spring, who register like right before school starts. So, Multnomah County had a big, Portland Public Schools and Multnomah County have had a big campaign about getting registration, that message out to families. And I'm hoping that we can do that together starting in the spring. So we created banners and stickers and yard signs, flyers that just encourage families to just go to their school and register. If your child's 5 by September 1, register for kindergarten today. what I struggle with is getting the word out through all of those partners like mental and, and mental health partners, clinics, all the early learning providers, community-based organizations and businesses. And when I was talking to Hillary about that, she's like, that's kind of what the hub does. Those are the stakeholders. So I just wanted to just pause for a minute and see what your thoughts are about, using some of the, print ready materials that we have, and just kind of launching this collectively in, late winter, early spring. Does this seem like something doable? Does it fit with the goals of your hub?
Begonia had a question about is the campaign only in English and Spanish? But it looks like it's 8 supported languages. Is that right, Nancy?
That's right. I'm actually just gonna see if I can show my screen here so you can see. Hold on a second. So this is the toolkit. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay. And page 23 includes links to all of the resources. So for example, the flyers, here are the languages, Arabic, English, the traditional and simplified Chinese, Chuukese, Russian, Somali, Spanish, and Vietnamese. And same with the yard signs and the banners. And then we have the kindergarten Here I Come stickers too. And so those are all in there. It's like print ready that you could give to a print shop. And if there are barriers, if you're in a community where that's challenging, that's something that I would want to know. If that's something that, I could coordinate with Hillary or, try and support you with that.
And Sarah Stevens said, yes, South Coast is in. And Jen asked, are we able to use these for sites that don't have the Jumpstart grant?
150%. That's the whole thing. This is the thing that we all do together across the state. I always say, when the tulips are coming up, that's when we start getting those messages out in the early spring. So every single district, I would love to see these banners up and yard signs up all over the state.
Great. Begonia, do you have a question?
Just to clarify, Nancy, so this is something that we could be doing now for those that did not enroll their children yet in kindergarten, but we are really looking at 23-24 because historically around this time of the year, we will be wrapping up so that by the second week of January, all school districts and everybody will have their printed materials in multiple languages. So what is the lifespan of this?
Well, you're right. Everybody's wrapping up and kids are starting to go to school, to kindergarten now. This is ODE trying to give advance notice to partners to say, hey, can we all be all in and kind of lift up this effort together. All the materials are already made. It's like we're in a much better place than we were last year when this was kind of a scramble. So my feeling is you all know your communities and what makes the most sense for timing. So I would just leave it to you to, use these materials, get them printed. If you need other things, I would love to know. We've also got on this page 23, a social media kit with ideas of when to post different messages. So we're trying to make this just kind of grab and go.
Great. Couple more comments. Do school districts also have these materials? And can you answer that too for those who are not participating in Jumpstart?
Good. So the 28 Jumpstart districts have these materials. What I did is I used the ESSER 3 funds to get all of it printed and sent out to them. I do not have the budget to do that for all 197 districts, but they all have access to this toolkit because it's posted on the Jumpstart Kindergarten website. So if that's something that they can collaborate with their hub, to me, that feels like a really good partnership, a really good project.
It will be great if the Delk logo is also there to show the collaboration, not just ODE.
Oh, I like that.
I also love that.
Yeah.
We like to, up in Multnomah, we like to promote early registration for kindergarten along with pre-K registration outreach, often the same family.
Yeah. And was that Molly or Francis?
Yeah, that was Molly.
Yeah. I think that is wonderful. I know you all have coordinated enrollment, and I think this just feeds right into that. So this could be part of whatever you're doing with Preschool Promise or Preschool for All. It's the yes.
And then Begonia said, we're also in to distribute these materials, and how soon can we get the materials so that our PACs can take a look, parent advisory councils?
Yes. Yes. And I should say that we worked with folks from Migrant Ed all over the state, some of you from Hubs. We got a lot of feedback from a lot of different groups, but I would love to hear what your PAC families are saying about this. I'll put my email in the chat before I leave, and you can also just put that feedback in on page 2 of the toolkit. Always wanting to know what you're thinking and how we can improve.
And Begonia, I'll be sharing out all the resources that Nancy has so that you can all have it after this meeting. And I'll also put Nancy's contact email in that email as well. So you will all have all of the things together.
Thanks, Hillary.
And you have about 6 minutes, Nancy.
Okay, that sounds great. I will go to the next slide. This is my other big idea. I offered parent-teacher home visit training for staff, for teachers, and I also got the word out to early learning partners. And what was so interesting is we had about 70 people attending, and it was about half kindergarten teachers and about half from the early learning community. And it just made me think, wow, would be so great for us to collaborate on professional development opportunities just throughout the year. An additional one that I would like to provide to Jumpstart grantees and your staff would be Red Light, Purple Light, which is a really wonderful self-regulation training out of OSU. It's just really fun, very hands-on. And then Cafe, which is, really, it's kind of a parent empowerment approach to family engagement that's really powerful and transformational. So I just was wanting to ask, are hub trainings open to district staff, school staff, I should say, kindergarten teachers, and I'm just wondering how much shared training happens in your communities.
I have a couple questions. Could I ask a couple questions?
Please.
Awesome. Hi, Nancy. I am really curious. Is Red Light, Purple Light, are they back open? I haven't talked with them for a while. I know last year, maybe it was the year before now, they were doing some pilots, if you will, or doing some studies on it, and they were limiting who they could do trainings for, and that could have ended. And because we love that training here and have done that with providers over time. So I was curious about that. And then also there is a lot of work that as a hub in our region and how we do KPI, there's a lot of shared professional development opportunities, including some of those types of things and others. And also all of our school districts already have some sort of a kindergarten jumpstart type program. So I'm curious, like, what is, how do we make sure that these are all in sync with each other? So do current Jumpstart type programs Are they now becoming this program? How are these all weaving together, I guess?
Yeah, you know,
A
the
really
first-
twisted way to get to a question.
no, it's
I
it's kind of how my
apologize.
brain thinks too.
Oh.
It's a really good question. It's like, how are we all like rowing together in the same direction, right? And I think we're very right now really focused on our communities, on our individual, hubs and the districts that you serve. And I think that works really well. I think that local approach is fantastic because you're really addressing the unique needs of the community. And I think it's helpful to, provide additional trainings. And that's one of the things that I'm sort of asking you, like with this parent teacher home visit program training, I thought, oh, we'll have 10. It is like the height of summer. No one will be on this. And we had like 71 people. They were super engaged. And I thought, wow, this is so exciting. And so many of them were not even in the school or district community. They were in early learning. So I guess my question to you is this something that I can start, and say, here, we maybe with a newsletter, here are 4 different kinds of trainings that we're going to be providing that support pre-K and K, family engagement or classrooms, and just open up registration and, do something like that where it would supplement all the amazing local things that are happening. Oh, Lisa, you're on mute.
I think definitely that could be helpful. I think what you just said is around that. How does this supplement what's already happening? Or, there may be schools either building by building or district by district that aren't already doing some Jumpstart. So this is a great toolkit to move forward with. But I want to use this as part of our KPI. In fact, we talked about it at our KPI retreat. Like, how can these things be a part of what we're doing with KPI, again, to help and supplement and our districts? And I think if you're sending that same message, like, here's some amazing resources, some may work for you and some may not, and that's fine. Getting, just sort of clear on that, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, I like that idea. I think that's why I like being in front of this group, is we can just be thinking, what are like 2 or 3 things that ODE can provide that you can help get out into your community, whether it's EIECSE, childcare, preschool promise, that's something that I really rely on DELC to do. So I don't know, that seems like that would be really exciting to do 3. And then for you all then to make sure that you're connecting with your district kindergarten teachers, or those who are going to be supporting the Jumpstart kindergarten equivalent, so that everybody's just interconnecting. Okay, my last slide, I show it, is just like questions and any conversation. I'm going to put the toolkit in the link, just because I feel like that's a good place to start.
And then Begonia has her hand raised as well.
Nancy, I just have a question, because the PD seems to me a little bit broad, and when we actually bring KPI with so many priorities for investment, I'm like, what do we mean exactly by PD and creating alignment? Is it going to be around suspension and expulsion, or inclusion, or DEI, or racial equity, or literacy, or STEM? So, because there's a lot of things that we are funding. So could we be more clear about when we do this collaboration, or when we leverage funds? So what do we mean by that? What are we targeting?
Well, for me, that's a really good question. I lean on the grantees that I work with, the 28 districts across the state, and through conversation and interviews, I find out what's top of mind, and also things that I noticed when I was doing my site visits. So, you know, one example is family engagement. What does high quality family engagement look like? How do we co-create that with our families? How do we partner with our early learning providers who are already doing really relevant, culturally affirming family engagement? How can they learn? How can districts and schools learn from what you're doing to continue that? So I think that's also where the regional meeting is so helpful, because we focus on that. In April, this happened last year. What are those pieces that we want to really focus on? And early learning and schools were, in that virtual table discussing that. So right now, I would just say, I know family engagement is a need. And I bet you all have some pretty amazing opportunities that would be wonderful if Jumpstart staff could be invited to that.
Any other questions for Nancy? Begonia, you had a question in the chat about red light, purple light. Is that culturally and linguistically responsive curriculum? Seems everybody's struggling with that piece.
Okay. I feel like I need to check back in with that team at OSU and see where they are now. I didn't realize that they put a pause on their trainings. So I think I'm just going to do a little bit of exploring. And if someone from one of the hubs would like to join me in those conversations, I think that would be really helpful for me to have that perspective. So please email me if you'd like to join me in a conversation with OSU on that. That would be fantastic. I think that's it for me. I think my big takeaway that I hope your takeaway from this is that we want to partner. I need to hear from you, because your perspective is just really valuable to Jumpstart Kindergarten. And I'm hoping you'll have time to review the toolkit, especially the partnership section, which I think is section 3, and give us any feedback, because we're going to update it and then we're going to translate it. And then finally, just really excited about working together on the register for kindergarten today. So I'm feeling really energized just by being in this virtual space. And I just want to thank Hillary and Maria for just letting me join you for a bit.
Thank you, Nancy. I really appreciate you being here. And again, I'm going to put all of these resources in the email I send out with the recording of the meeting, so you'll have it all in one space.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy.
Hey, talk to you all later.
Bye. Okay, next up is Andy. Andy is not feeling 100%, so she's going to be off camera, but she really wanted you all to have this information about the serious health and safety concerns, policies and procedures. So I'm going to let Andy present.
Thank you, Hillary. Thanks all. Apologies in advance if I have to go on mute for a second for coughing, but I do appreciate being here and getting to share this information with you all. It was important to us that we don't leave any partners too far behind. So this is information that has been shared with licensing field staff and with TRI and the CCRNRs. Today I get to share it with you all, and then I'll be speaking with OPK grantees tomorrow, and we are finalizing our communication plan for the Preschool Promise grantees, which will include a Gov delivery at some point as well. So wanted to come and give you guys all a little bit of an update around some of the work we've been doing to review and make revisions around the serious health and safety concern policy and procedure. I think previously it's just been called the memo in a lot of cases. I'm not sure in some of hubdom what other lingo it may have been referred to as, but we have been looking at it and we've made some revisions. So where have we been? So previously, this graphic on the right-hand side may look familiar to you all. So this serious health and safety concern memo, it was developed collaboratively by Joan Blau years ago in 2019, she was at that time, if you'll recall, the community systems director, and Amy Joyce, who at the time was the Office of Child Care Director. It was released on February 13th of 2020, and its purpose was really to provide guidance to staff who are on site in childcare programs who may witness something that is concerning, and really wanting to use it as a tool to be preemptive, to alert the best resources possible to a concern before it turns into something even more serious. And so wanting to, one, document that concerns were noted and really remind everyone of the shared responsibilities, but also how do we elevate concerns to the Early Learning Division, now known as DELC. You'll look there, you'll see the release date, February 13th, 2020. I am sure I do not need to remind anyone what happened exactly a month later. And so this policy and guidance wasn't really put into action until really starting last fall, when we TRI began doing more classroom observations with the ERS tool or the class tool in preschool promise classrooms, and also through Spark, and also in some OPK programs. And so that is when we started to get a little bit more feedback. As you know, creating policies and procedures that work perfectly in every situation is almost impossible. And so really launching these and then hearing what that experience is like in community is important. So what we did, excuse me, as how we got here today is we really took in some of the feedback and formed some of these core questions. So do we have the same intended goals with this memo today as we did in 2019, knowing that a lot has changed between then and now? Does this memo and process help us reach our goals? Looking at the new DELC mission, vision, and values, is it aligned with those mission, vision, and values? Are we really taking those into consideration, and do we see those things as in action in the practice of this policy and procedure? And really wanting, again, to hear from those who have experienced it in the last year and identify areas for improvement. So what we did was we engaged in several feedback conversations with those who had direct experience with the process. So that included our OPK directors and staff. It included preschool promise grantees and staff. It included TRI, who, like we said, is the current entity that conducts ERS or class observations as part of a classroom observation sampling plan for DELC within our OPK and Preschool Promise programs. And the intent of those visits is for continuous quality improvement. Those are not monitoring visits. And then also speaking with the child care resource and referral agencies as additional entities that are asked and do regularly spend time in programs. And so then we also reflected internally with the Child Care Licensing Division, our Program Design and Administration Office, which is the new name for the office, which houses OPK and Preschool Promise, as well as Baby Promise, Relief Nurseries, and Home Visiting, and a Professional Learning System, which is our office over here. So those were the three offices that worked collaboratively on revisions for this process. So what is different in the new process versus previously? So previously it was dictated in the memo that if a concern was observed, it must be reported to Office of Child Care immediately. At the end of the assessment, the language stated that staff were offered an opportunity to self-report. The feedback that we received was that offering an opportunity to self-report did not come across to grantees or staff as an opportunity, but more as a, if you don't do it, I'm going to do it. And we didn't want to turn this into a gotcha moment or any kind of power dynamic. And reports were still required to go to Office of Child Care, regardless of that self-report, to Compliance Specialist 3. And so really elevating it straight to compliance versus into a moment of really thinking about what is the best course of action to help this program resolve the concern. So that's really our goal with the new version, is that if a concern is observed, the observer will pause the observation and intervene to ensure the child or children are protected. They will request that the program make a correction. If they're unable to correct, observer can reach out to the Child Care Licensing Division regional manager for consultation, and the regional manager can decide on if there would be additional next steps taken within CCLD, or if we'll work collaboratively with a TA provider to address concerns. And so we're really trying to move this into a focus on improvement, not a gotcha moment. Those who are in programs outside of CCLD, they are not in a regulatory stance, and we don't want them to be. And so we really want this to be a moment where we can say, that is kind of concerning. We're concerned that children may not be safe or in a healthy situation at this moment. What can we do to address that and ensure that those who are visiting are not distracted by other things they may be concerned could be a regulatory issue? So what's the same? Obviously, the focus on protecting the health and safety of children. We know that everybody in the program, from the staff to the visitors to the families who have entrusted the staff with their children, the number one concern is protecting health and safety of children. And so really leaning on that together as our collaborative responsibility with programs, not against programs. There's a focus on mandatory reporting. Anyone who visits are still mandatory reporters. The definition of what is a serious health and safety concern is remaining the same, still including the pausing and intervening and providing resources and documentation. So that's where the revision looks like. So for our next steps, like I said, we're rolling this out to impacted partners over this next month. The formal documents and guidance are in the final stages of design. I have some I'm going to be reviewing later today, and then we'll send them off for translation. And then what we'll be doing is within the next 12 months, also be doing some additional feedback cycles for those who are really this policy and procedure would apply to. So DELC funded partners and community that are visiting programs, and really learn about the experience and how were these changes and how did these changes support a continuous quality improvement lens? So continuing to have those inquiry cycles, probably the first one will be, we're aiming for February. I haven't been keeping track of the chat. And so are there any questions?
Nothing in the chat so far.
Any non-typed questions anybody would like to yell out? Okay, that was as long as I can pause. So thank you all for your attention on this. You will be getting some documents that will formalize it. Like I said, they're being finalized with the communications and design team right now, and then we will have them translated so that they can be available in additional languages. There'll be guidance for TA providers, guidance for classroom assessment observers. And then there'll be guidance that will go directly to programs to help them think about what to do. And then we're also thinking about what kind of guidance would be helpful to you all. So if you do have any thoughts on that, please feel free to email me. That's my email right there. Or I'm sure if my email gets lost, you can email Hillary or Maria and they can send it to me. I see them both nodding, so I have not volunteered them for something out of the reach of their desires. So that sounds good.
Yep. And I'll also add your email, Andy, to my summary of the meeting with resources so they can have it directly there too.
Not a problem. And Hillary, if you want me to send you a copy of these slides, I can do that too.
Please. That would be great.
I can do that. No problem. All right, you guys enjoy the rest of your meeting and your day and your week. Happy almost fall. And good to see you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andy. Really appreciate you coming, even when you're not feeling good.
Of course. Thanks.
Woo! Okay, y'all. We made it through the big chunks of all the information. I feel like that was like info overload. I don't know about for you, but it was a little bit for me because it's Tuesday and kind of Monday. So next couple of things on our agenda, we really just kind of want to hear from you all. So first is Learning Collaborative. That's coming up at the end of September. There was an office hour earlier today. I know that some of you were able to go, but if you have any questions or concerns or anything, please reach out to myself or to Margie. And just a shout out to Margie McNabb, because she has been amazing in planning this entire learning collaborative. And she's incredible. So just want to make sure she gets her credit. But please do reach out if you have any questions or concerns. Next thing is I'm going to skip to the bottom one. It's almost the new fiscal year. We are October 1st. So with this new fiscal year, Maria and I both want to be as supportive as we possibly can for this next biennium. And so if there are concerns that you have, if there are meeting topics that you want people to present on, if there are, I don't know, more information that you need, if you want more advocacy from us internally, we are happy to do all and any of that. We're also happy to hear from you if there are things that you think are not getting done that you would like done. I'm just going to stop talking and let you join in.
Yes, and I think we really just want to make sure that this space is really something that's feeling relevant to all of you and that can feel, you know, like efficient for you guys. So anything that we can hear from you guys of who can we bring into this meeting space that will feel relevant and a good use of your time is what we really want. I know we're going to kind of skip over it, but maybe we can also start thinking about it for our next meeting. Is we really want to be able to find ways also to highlight all of the success stories that you guys are having within your hubs, and how can Hillary and I really elevate that and bring that to other tables so that they can learn about the amazing work that you guys are doing. So we would love to hear from you guys about what would be beneficial.
We're going to let it get real awkward here, folks.
I put it in the chat, but any idea on the grant process timeline?
I don't, no set timeline, Molly. Carla, you're here. All right. Take it away.
I am here. I'm still waiting for IT to remote into my computer. But so there's two parts to this. So the actual grant agreement is currently going through the procurement and DOJ legal blah 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 process. Thank you guys all for providing that feedback to Hillary. We took all of that, made it shiny and pretty, sent it to procurement. They're chugging along on that part. The other important part is I don't know what the numbers are yet. I'm not hiding them from you. I'm still waiting for the budget office to get those to me. The second I get them, I will share them. I just don't have them yet. I'm very eager. I have a lot of email drafts, a lot of templates of documents for you guys. I'm just waiting for those final pieces from budget and reconciliation to get those. What was the other thing I was going to say about hubs? Oh, the final quarter of the current biennium should be loaded into our new awards management system either today or tomorrow. So you'll start getting emails, like a welcome email and more information on the job aids and accessing the new awards management system. But they were asking me today, this morning, for clarification on a couple emails and things like that. So you should be seeing that very soon for that one. Amendment to coordinating Rome. I just saw that, Begonia. That one is on the same thing. So the amendment, I'm still waiting on dollar amounts. Once I have those allocated numbers, they've been working really hard to figure out how they were going to tackle that PDG backfill, and where the money was coming from, and making sure that, you know, they weren't robbing from someone else to pay for that backfill, and making sure everything was great. And what's the other thing I was going to say about coordinated enrollment? Shoot, I just lost the thought. It'll come back to me in a second. Still waiting on that. Shoot, I was really excited to say something too. Sorry, it'll come back in a second.
You can always put it in the chat too, or just interrupt.
Yeah.
Brenda, yes, we do have an updated statement of work. It hasn't gone through all the official channels yet, so I can't promise there won't be some slight changes to it, but I can send out what we have so far, just so you can all see where your input was taken very seriously, and we made some changes. So thank you all for providing that feedback.
Yeah, we submit that. All that feedback was, or the corrections were submitted to DOJ, and then they will take a look at it and tell us if we can legally do what we want to do, or if we're contradicting ourselves in, you know, page 12 and then page 15. So we're making sure that that's all great, and then we can go from there. And I still don't remember what that thing was. It's gonna drive me crazy now.
Thanks, Molly. And Begonia, I see your OCCD was conducting community engagement sessions. Feedback will be couple of resources and OCCD programs.
Hey, Hillary.
Yeah, can you answer that, John?
Not really, but I thought I'd try. So thanks again, Begonia. Ask all the questions that relate to my department today. I appreciate it in the chat. I started typing, but then I was like, oh wait, Hillary's talking about it. Hey all. I do not have the exact date on when, actually I just pinged somebody and they might have answered the question. It looks like in September, we're going to have a feedback analysis report. So the Oregon Registry is going through an opportunity to be revised, to become more accessible, and all the things that Begonia put into the chat were being assessed, and community partners were being engaged with. And so we'll have an initial draft of the recommendations somewhere around that period of time also, so September-ish, probably towards the end of this month. And then OCCD will be putting together, the Center for Career Development in Early Childhood Care and Education, in case anybody doesn't know what OCCD is. We'll be putting together a plan on how they anticipate utilizing those recommendations to make changes. And that'll be by around November, I believe. And so we can make sure that there's feedback to partners that were engaged, so that they know what came of their engagement. So that would probably be around September and October. I mean, probably, let's just say October. But I will say, and I'll try not to use up much airtime here, House Bill 2991 is actually creating another layer of assessment of the registry system. As David mentioned a little bit earlier, that particular piece of legislation is going to allow us to fund an entity to look at everything from degree translation and how accessible the pathways are within the system. So it's going to be an addition. It's going to be in addition to this current level of engagement, but probably even deeper. And we want to make sure that we're not wasting the effort that was done up to date. But we think that there's really some big implications of creating a really good registry and set of pathways. So there will be more and a deeper dive into what needs to be changed so that it is truly an accessible system. So more to come on that, where we actually have to put out a request for application to select the entity that will be driving that revision process forward, or the recommendation process forward. And so that request for application could go out in the next month, I believe. So these things won't be totally aligned, but they'll be we'll build upon what has already been done in this most recent process.
That answer your question, Begonia? Great.
I was going to go ahead and type that into the chat box.
Yeah, go ahead and do that now.
Give me
Thanks.
15 minutes.
Any other questions?
I remembered what I was going to say.
Great.
So I wanted to let everyone know that for coordinated enrollment, thanks to some awesome hubs that provided some feedback, we will be no longer doing a year 1, year 2 split on the funds. It'll just be one pot. And then you'll have access to it. A lot of hubs said that was going to be more useful for them, and there was no reason for us to not. We looked and made sure that there's nothing that was stopping us, and there isn't. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and that'll show up in the amendment. We're going to eliminate that year 1, year 2, and just do a whole 2-year pot of money.
Yay, that's exciting. We listen. We do listen. See, we listen.
Yay, yay, yay.
I wanted to go back to one thing. I'm totally switching gears on us really fast. Go back to something that Maria was talking about earlier about elevating hub stories, success stories, and challenges too. I think Maria and I are looking for spaces within DELC internally to share some of those stories. I think that we've all been in some of those meetings where we've heard people say, I don't know what hubs do. And that should not be the case internally. So what we're looking to do is to share some of your stories and how you do your systems work. And then what does that look like in terms of outcomes for kids and families in Oregon? And so we are just sort of, we're just kind of planting the seed now of like, how would we best get those stories from you? Is that something like, as we're looking at revising the quarterly report, is that the best space for it? Is it best when we're meeting one-on-one to get some of those stories? So we're just planting that seed now, so you can start thinking about how it would be easiest for you, best for us to get them, so that we can internally be sharing those things and talking about hub successes. Okay, this is it. Questions, comments, anything else? Yay, we made it through the meeting. Woohoo. Fine, I will woohoo by myself. It's fine.
Woohoo!
All right, everybody, have a wonderful day, and I'll send out the recording and all the things that I talked about. Have a great day. Bye.